Not in my experience, no. It very much depends on the role and who that's attracting. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, but
I don't think there's a magic number, but I do think you're right, you do have to start off with a lot more than the number you actually need. And I think there's lots of kind of quite good reasons for that. And one of them is that I think sometimes people overlook is that when someone's thinking about volunteering, they're sometimes like in the process of changing their life around in other ways. And so, you know, you interview someone, they're really good, and then they phone you up like a couple of weeks later because they're travelling to China or something. And so it's not, they don't like your organisation, it's just because their path has just moved in a different direction. So I think as a rule of thumb, yeah, you just need to pretty much interview everybody, usually, and you never usually end up with having too many people. I mean, there are exceptions to that, says she hastily, but often that's the case.
I think for me, it always depends on what you're actually looking for and what you actually need. For most volunteer roles, you are not really looking for the most amazing person who can come forward. I tend to kind of juxtapose the recruitment method, or the recruitment process for paid workers to that for most volunteer roles, because when you try to recruit to a paid post, you will get, say, 50 people apply, and the question that you're using is, well, who's the best out of all these people? Who's going to be the best person for this position? Now, actually, with volunteering, most of the time you're thinking, well, is there a reason not to take this person on, rather than is there a reason to take this person on? What you need to be is just be clear on what you need for the role. You know, what's the bottom line for the role? Does someone definitely need to have, say, a certain piece of experience or even qualifications? Now, some volunteer roles will be like that. You may need a specific background, but for a lot of volunteer roles, you don't need that. You just need someone who can do the role. You know that can bit of training and they'll be able to do the role. So yeah, I wouldn't look at numbers of how many people you see or so on.
Starting to take it really personally. We get a lot of inquiries. So. We probably get about 20 inquiries a week about some of the volunteer job ads that we have, and I do interview them all, and there's never a reason not to employ anybody or to offer them some volunteer roles. And maybe if it's not that specific position, there'll be something else for them to do. But you know, for example, out of 40 volunteers that we interviewed last year, financial year, we have 17 active at the moment. I don't know if that's a good or a bad stat, or if we're actually doing something wrong or right. I'm not sure.
It's nearly half. I think that's probably quite good, actually. Certainly in my experience, I've heard other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to kind of generalise across anywhere, but that's not bad. I mean, actually, I wouldn't see it a bad thing if people don't go through and drop out, because what you're looking for are people who are going to be happy within a role. And I do think it's quite important actually to allow people to self-select out, so that you're providing quite a lot of information up front about a role. So if someone sees an ad and thinks, oh yeah, that sounds interesting, gets in touch with you, you can provide them with information like a role description, information about the organisation, you know, what it would actually be like to volunteer. Now, if people then drop out, actually that's quite a good thing, because they've decided, well, that's not right for me. And I think allowing volunteers to self-select out is really useful. And again, I think I mentioned before having a taster period, so that people can give it a go for a month. And then they've got a period of time where, without losing face, they can say, actually, no, that's not right for me. You know, providing all this information means that you lose more people at the earliest stage, but the people you get through are the ones who are hopefully going to stay longer.
I agree. I completely agree. Otherwise, you might end up with a volunteer like Donna has, who's sticking around for years, and potentially Donna's volunteer just doesn't know how to say, you know what, I don't want to volunteer here anymore. I was going to say that a lot of successful volunteer management starts with the volunteer not even being around, the role not even being created yet. You need to start from scratch and think about what would attract someone to the role, what does your perfect candidate look like. Think about the skills and qualities that they would need to be able to fill the role successfully. If you do accept someone or are able to accept someone who doesn't have those, are you able to provide training that would give them that skill or quality, perhaps? Also, then you need to think about the, and taking it on back. A lot of people say to us that, well, actually, I contacted the organization, that person's on holiday, and no one else is interested, and they feel really rejected. Or the telephone number is incorrect, or the email address is bouncing back, and things like that. So it's even the most basic things that can create a really bad first impression for people, and that you definitely don't want. And then before you even interview people, you want to think about the induction program that you're going to have. Is that going to be formal, informal? Are you going to have buddying and shadowing other volunteers who are perhaps experts in what they do? Or do you want it, more formal? Or is it flexible for different volunteers in different roles? These are the things that you need to think about. And if it's certain roles that people are dropping out on, why is that? Is it that you're not giving enough support to people who are in those roles? Do people know who their supervisor is? Are they having supervision sessions regularly? Those sorts of things. And obviously you also need policies and procedures in place before you even take on a volunteer, or a handbook and that sort of thing, so that they know what you expect of them. Just to let you know.
Yeah, it is, as everybody said, very important to see that initial meeting as a two-way thing, and it's as much a chance for the volunteer to gain information about what they're going to be doing as it is for you to sort of interview them and assess them.
We do like a four-week or four-session trial, and it's for both of us really to kind of assess and suss each other out. And the nature of our work is disability, and some people, whilst their heart is in the right place, once they get into the field, it's not for them, and they can't handle it or can't work with it, or, you know, it's just, but it's a two-way thing. So we always give them as much information up front, because we don't want them to turn up to a session and be like, you know, what's going on here? Because it is face-to-face dealing with people.
Well, as someone who sees a lot of the requests that come into us, most volunteers shop around, and that shopping around can even happen even after they've been recruited. So they might have actually been recruited for a couple of different roles at the same time, and they're still sort of deciding if it's for them. Also, there's certain times of year that people get a lot more excited about volunteering. One of which is like the beginning of the summer, the beginning of the school year, maybe after you make a New Year's resolution. And as we know, like with gym memberships and things like that, that sort of enthusiasm could soon wane if you think, I don't actually have enough time to do this. And another thing that we're finding, especially at the moment, is a lot of people are thinking of volunteering because they've been made redundant, and then perhaps thinking, you know what, maybe I'm going to move back to my home country. And examples like that, we've had that at the center recently quite a few times. And also with the recession, people are usually looking for paid employment at the same time. I accepted a volunteer earlier this week who then the next day told me she got full-time paid employment, which is great for her, but not so great for us, I suppose. But that's a success story anyways for her.